Hi everyone, this is Patricia. So I just want to let you know, for those who didn't watch the context of the announcement regarding about me leaving Old School Lane and my friend Alex was going to be taking over with his podcast Showdown at the Movies, as well as being the host of Casual Chats. That was an April Fool's Day joke. I know a lot of people got it, but for those who didn't and were really concerned for me saying, oh, you shouldn't be leaving, you're really special to Old School Lane. Well, I just want to thank you so much for that. That really means a lot, especially with me being really, really busy with a lot of stuff and not being able to have time to edit podcasts or write video scripts. Seriously, that does really warm my heart, knowing that you actually do care about whatever content that I put out, even though that I wish that I can be able to sit down for, maybe hours or even days to give you the best stuff that I can do. But no, seriously, you guys are the best. And the fact that I'm still growing in subscribers, we have over 12,000 right now, which, by the way, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. You guys are seriously the best. And I'm hoping that whenever I do have the time to post stuff, I'm going to be posting up something really special. So stay tuned for that. What you're about to listen to is a discussion of Season 3, Episode 3 of the Disney Channel animated series, The Owl House, that we've covered on Arun and Patricia. So for those who don't know, Arun and Patricia is a weekly podcast series where we talk about various pop culture news, and we've been watching Season 3 of The Owl House. But that's not the only show we talk about. We covered Season 1 of Monsters at Work, we've covered the second half of Season 3 of Amphibia, and we're currently doing Season 1 of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. So I just want to let you know that there are major spoilers ahead. If you have not seen the final episode of The Owl House, Watching and Dreaming, then please, I implore you to go check it out on Disney Plus, the Disney Channel YouTube channel, Disney Now, or if you can to support the official release. If you haven't checked out the remaining podcasts that we have covering this show, then please check out the Old School Lane YouTube channel's playlist or check it out on Arun and Patricia. But if you have caught up, then sit back, relax, and enjoy.
So, for those of you who do not know surely there's people now who are listening to this right now, surely know what we're talking about. It is the final episode of The Owl House, Watching and Dreaming. So, what a great way for a great show to go out. Like, from the very beginning of The Owl House, actually, I lie, I'll start from this again. So, when I first heard from the fans about The Owl House, I was already spoiled on, the finale of Season 1, and I was told that, oh, hey, you should look at this. This is a really great show. And so the first couple of episodes, I mean, obviously it was, Disney doing some hand-holding, so that can kind of be forgiven. But the minute we got to understanding Willow, and all the way through Season 2, and all the way up to these specials that we've had in Season 3, wow, we've gone through probably, one of the greatest Disney animated shows, since the 1980s, I would even say. I always thought the Gummy Bears was quite, even though it's quite a basic, Disney animated show, I always had, it had a great lore, and it had, some great backstory and stuff. And there was some throwaway episodes, I do admit, but, then it kind of continued on to Tailspin, and then it carried on to Gargoyles, which I think was, a really fantastic show. Then we got other shows like, the original DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, things like that, and so there is already a bar that's already been set, and I can say from very safely after going through this entire show that this is definitely, if not top 10, if not top 5, top 3 at least. It's such a great experience that I've actually gone through, and it's definitely taken me back as to the time when I was watching Disney animated shows as a kid. I'll definitely say that.
Yeah, when I grew up with watching Disney Afternoon, when they had that block around the early to mid 90s where we saw DuckTales, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Goof Troop, Gargoyles, Bonkers the Bobcat, and various others. I mean, it definitely reminded me of that time in which there was so many amazing shows that aired on the Disney Channel. I mean, it was kind of like a rivalry. I mean, it's what do you want to watch? I mean, do you want to watch cartoons? Do you want to watch, the Friday Night Nicktoons? Do you want to watch, Disney Afternoon? I mean, it was kind of like a debate in terms of which one gave the best quality in terms of their animated shows at a specific time slot. And yeah, I think that over the past decade or so, I mean, we've seen this with Gravity Falls, Phineas and Ferb, but we saw this with Big City Greens. We saw this with the Tangled animated series. We saw this with Amphibia. And now with the Owl House, it was a way to continue on that momentum of there are some similarities between like each of the shows, but they have their own distinct flavor of what made them stand out. You had like Gravity Falls, which was more of a mystery. You had Phineas and Ferb, which was kind of like your take on like the episodic shows where, you know, something different is happening, but it doesn't continue on, but they make a lot of jokes about it and they have great music. You have Amphibia, which is definitely taken into the more of approach of leaning more towards fantasy and a mixture of like this social commentary on different classes and how they're separate, but they can be able to become together in the end, and the true trials of trying to save a broken friendship. You have Big City Greens, which is a lighthearted adventure about this country family moving into the city and all the things that they have to learn while adjusting to themselves when going through a lot of trials as a family, and you know, all of that stuff. And with the Owl House, you have a young girl who was misunderstood by pretty much everybody, and she wanders into this magical place filled with scary monsters and creatures and magic, and she opens up to herself with wanting to become an apprentice to being a witch, and basically just teaming up with somebody who just wanted to be alone and wanted to scam people off for money. And you have this you know, crazy little demon guy who wants to be king and rule over everything, and you have all these different types of characters. You have like you know, this shy girl who is a little bit of a late bloomer with her magic, this really grumpy girl who is like the smartest in the class, and she wants to follow everything to a T until everything that she knew about her perception of life is broken off. And then we have this basically a fascist dictator who wants to be able to control everything and lead things in a certain separate perspective until eventually we see his true colors, where he just wants to get rid of everything that he does not seem fit as his own. So every single one of these shows has its own style and its own memorable moments with its music and its characters and its storylines, and the Owl House is no exception. And this last episode cements it.
Yeah. So, Watching and Dreaming is the final episode of The Owl House, and you know, it is in a way, you know, just as an overall, like this episode is very satisfying, I think, as an ending. But I guess, you know, as someone who's always argued that this show should have gone like, you know, the 5 seasons, 100 episodes, a movie, you know, that kind of thing. You know, like I think, you know, it is bittersweet, I have to say, to finally say goodbye to the Owl House. And but what we got effectively, I think, was a very satisfying last, you know, conclusion. I think to lose the human story. I think, you know, in her time in the Boiling Isles. So the way it starts off is that it doesn't like, you know, go with like any particular intro or anything like that. It just kind of throws you right back into where we left off, and so the whole place starts shaking. All of a sudden, you know, people start disappearing. Luz, you know, all of a sudden like disappears herself, and then she wakes up, you know, dressed up as the Emperor, Emperor Bellows, you know, in this in the Citadel, effectively, and and then she's been chased around by her own friends, you know, it's you know, it is the thing that kind of throws you into the loop. Pretty much about, you know, what I mean, why is she doing here? Like, you know, why are all her friends attacking her? Why is these things happening? And I mean, we catch on pretty quickly that it's a dream sequence, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, hence the title, Watching and Dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that this is a great way to kind of like continue off Luz's journey into basically becoming the stronger and more forgiving protagonist that we've seen throughout the course of the show. I mean, we already know that throughout the second half of season 2, she went through basically a deconstruction of thinking that she was the hero. And then, you know, she thought that she was the one who helped Philip Waidebane into becoming Bellows by showing the glyph. And she thinks that she was the one responsible for causing her friends to be separated from her family during the Day of Unity. And she feels like she is the villain in all of this. She thinks that she is just as bad as Bella. She feels guilty for running away into the Boiling Isles and not, you know, telling her mother the truth. She feels bad about a whole bunch of things. And so we see throughout season 3 that she is starting to heal and forgive herself. We saw the bit in which she was able to talk to her mother about feeling guilty about running away. and then feeling guilty about trying not to be like what, she thinks that she should be, until we see from Camila's perspective that she just didn't want her to suffer the same bullying that she went through when she was younger. And also we find out that the only thing that she's ever wanted was to be understood. And she learned those lessons. The only things that she needed to learn was that she was not the one responsible for causing all of the madness that happened to her friends for them being separated from their families. And she is not just as evil as Emperor Bellows with all the events that happened. She is trying to do good, while we see that Emperor Bellows has been pretty much ruthless from the very beginning, only thinking about himself and trying to say to himself that he is the hero of all of this, trying to essentially commit genocide to, essentially creatures and witches and a whole bunch of living beings from the Boiling Isles, just because, he was raised that way during the 1600s, in which there was the witch trials. So, yeah, getting to see Luce overcome that was incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah. So, people wondering how on earth she got out of the dream. Well, obviously we saw that, Amity, who was under the Collector's control, let it slip that she wanted to challenge Luz to a witches' battle. It's not a witches' battle, it's a witches' duel. And Luz called it out, which I thought was really clever. I think in the way that she finally, figured out that, this isn't real. And then, that's we saw this in the trailer already with saying that, the way that you wake up from a dream is to turn on, what happens when you wake up from a bad dream, you turn on the light, and then she gives her the light glyph, which I thought was a really good touch. I thought it was, the light glyph is like, there's a lot of full circle, going over here in this episode. Pretty much, like, where, the three weirdos, are separated, but, come together to begin with, and then are separated again, and then come together for, like, the finale. Which I think is like, there's a lot of full circling going on in this episode, I have to say.
Yeah, and the first time that they do reunite with one another, I mean, it was the first time that they've seen each other in months. So they thought that they would never see each other again. And so Luz quickly discusses about what she went through during that time where Bellows was in the human world, and when they reunited again with Kikimora in Hexside. And then Luz found out that Ida no longer had one of her arms, and Ida found out that Luz's talisman was hatched, and we have String Bean. And then, of course, we have the Collector seeing the entire thing with quote-unquote Rain, telling him that, if you allow them to play your games in person, then they'll definitely be your friends. And we have that little slip up from the Collector that King is a Titan. And so Rain, or should we say Bellows, decides that he's going to go over to the palace and he's going to control the Titan's heart so that he can be able to become the most powerful being in the Boiling Isles.
It's quite interesting that he never, I guess he couldn't draw that conclusion to begin with because he wasn't aware of the Titans, to begin with, I guess.
No, so. I mean, absolutely not. I mean, even though that he was around for hundreds of years at that point, I take it that the archivists have already taken the Titans at that point in time, and the only thing that was left was the egg. And I take it that Philip and Bellows, later on, had no idea about the Titans at all. And the fact that, Bellows has only been ruling the Boiling Isles for about 50 years, so I take it that he probably had never seen a Titan in person, other than, the fact that the Boiling Isles is the carcass of a Titan, and the only thing that's left over is the Titan heart.
There's also the fact that, even Philip Willoughby said to Luz at one point, if you remember that in that time travel episode, that, it feels like the Titan trying to keep things from me. It could also be a thing that, the Titan himself was also trying to keep things away from, even the idea of the Titan's history, and also the fact that King was around, also he's trying to keep that away from, from Bellows himself. So there's that possibility as well. So
yeah, for sure.
So, we move on to the Collector wanting to play the games, and obviously, he keeps losing the games from what we can see. And so, the Collector gets all upset, and obviously, he goes into his corner and starts crying, and things like that. And, Ida, tries to stop, Luz from, consoling him, but then King turns around and says, oh no, out of everybody who could do this, Luz is the best person to do it, as she has been in this entire show, which I think was also a good touch as well. Because, you've seen what Luz has done. She is the one who, turned Willow around in regards to how, shy she was. And, she's made a more of a more more, forthcoming person. And then Amity, obviously she turned her around, a complete 180, from where she was at that point. And she's done this with like every other character in the show, even though she's not really been aware of like how much joy she's actually spread.
Yeah, like I said before, Luz is essentially a shonen protagonist. She is like Goku. She's like Naruto, in which like you have all of these characters that she's around where, they start off as like enemies or antagonists or they're like rivals or something like that. And then because of her kindness and because of just her quirky personality and her unique way of thinking, they just gravitate to her and they become much better people. I mean, we have Ida, who started off as like somebody who was really selfish and somebody who had no cares in the world of anybody but herself, and taking in Luz, and she became a motherly character that she never would have been otherwise. And then we have, like you were mentioning before, with Willow becoming more confident. We have Amity, who became somebody who was like really angry and wanting to follow the rules, into somebody who's like more smiling, more confident, and seeing that the rules that she has been following was wrong. And we even know from all the other characters that she's been around with. I mean, Lilith is another example, and even with like her experiences with everybody else that she's been with, I mean, they are all rooting for her because she was able to bring such a positivity. I mean, yeah, and like a pun here, but a light to the darkness that they've all gone through. And so I think that the fact that the Collector was going through all of this and Luz knows exactly how they're feeling, she basically tells the Collector, hey, I understand that you're feeling misunderstood. I understand that you went through so much when the Archivist, they dropped you into Earth playing hide and seek, and in reality they were watching you play with the Titans, and then they took them away fearing it was they were too powerful, and then you were basically taken over to like a prison for hundreds of years out of innocence, because the Titan had no idea that you were the one not doing it, and then tricked by Bellows and then tricked by King. I mean, the Collector went through so much. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Spinel from Steven Universe Future, in which like you have Spinel, who is this very optimistic and loving character who wants nothing to do but to play games with Pink Diamond. But then when the war happens and Pink Diamond told Spinel, stay in the garden, she stayed in the garden for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, watching from the Earth of Pink Diamond turning into Rose Quartz, being able to, be getting new friends, falling in love with Greg, having Steven, then dying, and her waiting for her to come back and never doing so. It is a tragedy. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of things that we'll compare with Steven Universe, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be wondering about one particular thing, but we'll get to that. But in the meanwhile, the Collector does see that, basically that in order for him to actually interact with people, he can't just be very forceful. He has to do it naturally, and it's not going to be easy, considering that Luz, Ida, and King started off on the wrong foot several times, and Luz had a lot of things to learn. I mean, you see the growth and progression that Luz went through from season 1 all the way to season 3, where she started off as like this scatterbrain who was very naive and wanted to just learn a lot of things, but in matters of maturity and in matters of just growing and learning of the Boiling Isles and the glyph magic and making friends, that all the things that she went through in her own journey, it wasn't easy, but eventually she was able to get to where she was by choice and by learning and by not giving up. And the Collector had to learn this lesson the hard way when Bellows eventually absorbs the heart of the Titan and becomes a giant beast.
Yeah. So, in regards to Luz and, the Collector, they start their relationship pretty much, and so Luz says, oh, hey, well, we're a bunch of weirdos as well who, were misfits, and, we just banded together, and we want to tell you about, like, everything that happened, and and then Collector says, well, like, here's the thing about Collector, like, he is a mixture of a very young and naive child who is also a hermit, and, like, has basically just been isolated for, like, thousands of years. pretty much. And like you have no choice really but to kind of sympathize with him because like he can't help the way that he is. Because, in a way, he's been somewhat abused pretty much at this point. Like, he was fooled by his siblings, who we now are known as the Archivists, who sent him down to the Boiling Isles to play with all the Titans. And then when the Archivists realized how powerful the Titans were, they used him as a decoy to kind of like, take the Titans away. And then, I'm assuming the King's dad then blamed the Collector for what happened and punished him, even though it was not his fault. So like he has been through a lot in like the not in like in the beginning of the show, but like for thousands of years, pretty much at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And now from what we've learned in Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door, where we saw the flashback of the Owl Beast being captured, even though the credits say Collector, it's technically an archivist who's basically capturing all the beasts whom they deemed to be really powerful. So we got a glimpse of that all the way toward the early parts of season 2. And I think that that's great foreshadowing to what would come later. And knowing the Collector is just trying to, play games. He doesn't want to follow in the ways of the other Collectors or even his siblings, the Archivists. He's just a little kid who just so happens to have infinite amounts of power, who just wants to play games and have fun. But unfortunately, he's taken advantage of because, again, he's a naive child. And the tragedy of it becomes very apparent when you hear more of his backstory. And Luce is basically telling the Collector, well, let me just show you the ways of how you can be able to see where we came from into being friends and how you can be able to do the same thing. And I think that that's very smartly told because going through that experience, you can be able to help people firsthand.
Yeah. So we go through that. And though we also get some back and forth between because the all the rest of the Hex Squad pretty much have been captured and are now puppets and that but the one thing that Amity somehow, and I don't know how exactly that she does it, I guess the puppets are capable of like small movement and also they are capable of crying and stuff. So, maybe they aren't, fully trapped, maybe they're just kind of, it's in, a prior stasis or something like that. I don't know really how to describe it, but somehow Amity manages to move her finger to create a light glyph, and then uses the light glyph to then awaken herself. So, the Collector's power is not not all that great against the Titan, pretty much. So, they can use the glyphs in order to wake everybody up. And so they do the same thing also with Camila later on in the show. So.
Exactly. And I think that the fact that Amity was able to kind of be helped by Luce in a way, because remember, the Collector was controlling Amity, Willow, Gus, and Hunter. And so because that they were being controlled, and then eventually they were woken up to saying, hey, we're being controlled. And then when they were brought back up over to the archive room, I guess this was the opportunity for Amity to start carving the light glyph with her finger and then eventually waking herself up. And then it woke up everybody else up. And then they see that they're in the archival room surrounded by all these puppets, and that this is their opportunity to basically save all of the puppets. They wake up Camila first, and then they try to wake up everybody else, but their powers are pretty much drained because they haven't gotten any rest. So I think that seeing where they were up to at this point, I mean, I'm glad that they were able to have moments where we were able to switch between the different sides. You have Bellows, who finally is able to make it to the castle thanks to the Collector's Kirby Star glider. And then you have Rain, who is finally broken off from from Emperor Bellows's control. And they're trying to stop Bellows from reaching the heart, which, kudos for that, because we saw what happened when Hunter was being controlled by Bellows. Hunter was basically weak and exhausted. He was going through a lot of trauma when he lost Flapjack. But when Rain was being controlled for who knows how long, maybe a day or so. And then finally, when they're back to, they have basically this mission to stop Bellows no matter what. They whistle, they use their violin. So you know what? I'm giving major kudos for Rain for that.
Mm-hmm. So, Rain tries to stop Bellows from taking over the Titan, but unfortunately, she falls slightly short, and therefore ends up getting kind of swallowed up by Bellows when he takes over the Titan's chest at that point. And then once we're done for like all going around Lou's King and Ida's locations where they spend time with and teaching the Collector kindness and things like that. Unfortunately, that's when the Titan starts to wake up with Bellows inside of it, and so obviously we thought at that point they say they're like, how are we going to stop something like that? And then all of a sudden the Collector says, oh, I know how to do it, and we think we're going to get this fighting sequence between the Collector and Bellows at that point, but no, the Collector decides to stop, then hugs the beast. And,
let's get into another parallel with Steven Universe. So I'm sure a lot of people have said their complaints about Steven was being too forgiving of the diamonds. So you have white diamond, yellow diamond, blue diamond, in which they were, basically committing mass genocide to all of the other lesser gems and having this massive rule with an iron fist. And so you would think that this would be the opportunity for them to be finally defeated. But no, in reality, Steven was actually talking to them, showing them the error of their ways. And a lot of people complained about it, saying, oh, they should have been defeated because of all the trauma that they've caused, the gems for thousands upon thousands of years. All they needed was a talking to, and now they're just being redeemed. I think that that's kind of a trope that a lot of people are just sick of over the years about the redeemable villain. And here's the thing. It can be pulled off really well if you do it right. I mean, Steven Universe does it right with an example where, yes, the diamonds have done a lot of horrible things. But at the same time, they were taught that way for thousands upon thousands of years, and they didn't know the repercussions of what they were doing until they saw it for themselves, about destroying multiple worlds and have it be as sections and different layers and castles, so that they can be able to continue ruling everything, not knowing about the fact that they're destroying millions upon millions of lives just so that they can be able to have galactic conquering. And so Steven was able to show off the important lesson of not being able to do that. And here's the thing, sometimes violence is always, sometimes is not the answer. You can't just fight your way in order for things to be the way they are. And I'm sure that people complained about in Avatar: The Last Airbender, where everybody was telling Aang, you have to kill Fire Lord Ozai. But if he would have killed him, would that make the Avatar a murderer? Would that make Fire Lord Ozai a martyr? It's a very complicated thing. And so with the whole, hey, we need to have this redeemable moment. I mean, not all the villains are the bad guys. Well, this is a showcase that, here's the thing, Bellows has been told countless times by multiple people about what he was doing was wrong. He was told by Caleb. He was told by Luce and Lilith and everybody around him, but he just didn't listen because he thought that he was the hero in his story, when in reality, he was not.
I'm the main character.
And so the fact that the Collector was thinking that kindness and forgiveness was going to be the one to help Emperor Bellows to see his ways, it was not going to happen. But that scene is actually really important because earlier on we saw that the Collector didn't know about the fragileness of mortal lives, where he was just comparing lives to it's like a toy. You can break it and it'll easily fix together. But when Luce was attacked by Bellows after saving the Collector from being blasted away, Luce is taken away by Emperor Bellows' blast and she dies. Yes.
Yeah, and so time to traumatize the Collector, everybody.
Well, not just traumatize the Collector, but traumatize Ida and King, because when they saw that Luce was dead, they went into their full power mode. King unleashed his full Titan abilities. Ida had full control of the Owl Beast. They went all out to kill Emperor Bellows, and it was awesome. Yeah. And the Collector learned about how lives are not just something that you can easily fix with a snap of a finger. Especially with a mortal life, especially with a human life, it is fragile. It can't just be fixed away that easily. And he sees the error of his ways. And that is what fixes him to saying, what I've been doing this entire time of ruining everybody's life in the Boiling Isles just because I wanted to play some games was wrong. And this is when he fixes up almost every mistake that he had done at that point in time.
Yeah. Let's talk about Luce's death. As much as some people, I've been actually watching a lot of like people reacting to that, and good grief, were the tears flowing when that came in. Despite the fact that
Yes,
we,
here comes the waterworks.
despite the fact that we've already seen this in Amphibia, but that's another story. But in regards to the death, I mean, it's interesting because maybe we should talk about the next bit, maybe before we get into this discussion. But Luz is then shown in what was now known as the world between worlds, or the mirror world, as we've been describing it, and so
Or the in-between.
in the in-between, or however people have been describing it, basically, like, the world of floating cubes, but however you want to do it, like, so she's shown, like, saying, oh, the last thing I really wanted to say to everybody was thank you, and then all of a sudden an arm comes and grabs her and pulls her inside, and no, it's not Action 52, but so she gets pulled up into I can't believe I'm making that reference, but then she gets pulled up by would you believe, the Titan himself, who surprisingly is dressed in a dressing gown, a bad girl Coven shirt, and also some really funky pants.
Yeah, I love the pants, by the way. They're covered in the glyph signs, and I just thought that's awesome.
Do you know what the icing of the cake in all of this is?
The hootie eye?
No, the fact that this character is voiced by Aaron Hansen.
A ego raptor.
After himself. Yeah, the most powerful character, one of the most powerful characters in the Boiling Isles is voiced by one half of Game Grumps.
Not only that, but probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest animator in Newgrounds back in the 2000s. One half of Starbomb, and basically the one who, had this long, elaborate video about the differences between Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past, and the Mega Man X videos. So, yes, that guy.
Yeah. You know, they have a moment with Luz, which I think is really cool, and
it is super great. By the way, I love this, considering the fact that our perception of the Titan was always like he's supposed to be grand, he's supposed to be tall and menacing, and we thought he was going to look like Varric with the robes and everything. But no, he just looks like some guy's dad that you would see in your living room. He's just relaxing after a long days of work.
Yeah, either that he's like
I just love the plot twist in this. I mean, that's one of the great things about this show, is that it subverts expectations. It's giving me like Jack 3 vibes all over again when we find out who the precursors are. If you played the game, you already know what I'm talking about.
He looks like a guy who he doesn't take life seriously. Like, he's just like, look, this is just this is my life. Like, here I am in between worlds. Like, yeah, it kind of sucks what happened, but hey, at least I got to see. Gets to play Let's Plays with, like, the lead of the Ninja Sex Party, So, like, but seriously, like, this is a really cool concept to go with, and again, like, the one criticism I guess I will give this is that from Luz's death to what we're about to talk about next, unfortunately, like, don't get me wrong, like, this was all being put together at the same time Amphibia was being put together, so I guess maybe they didn't have a much chance of originality, but let's face it, Amphibia did it first.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Just because it did it first doesn't mean it did it best. Now, they're completely different. Now, here's the thing we already know about from Anne. So when Anne sacrificed herself so that Marcy and Sasha can be able to get just enough power so that they can be able to defeat the moon, Anne was brought back to life thanks to the Guardian and was given, more decades of living until she turned 91 so that she can become the next Guardian. But here, it's basically that the Titan has been with Luz this entire time. This was actually built up even further than Amphibia. From the very beginning, all the way back in episode 3, when we first saw Luz doing the light glyph, after she was trying to help Ida's controlling the Albeast form, and she saw the picture from her phone. This was leading up into when the Titan was essentially showing her the glyphs. We saw this with, her learning about the ice glyph when they went over to the knee. We saw her learning about the plant and fire glyphs when it was during Gromfright. We saw throughout season 2 that she was learning all different types of glyphs. So she was learning and progressing and getting connections from the Titan itself. So this happened from the very beginning. So it actually builds itself even further than Amphibia. And I think that, like I said, they're both completely different. And even though that it does feel similar, the way that it's paid off is completely different. And it has different results in which, like, it is true that Anne had gotten her powers from the Calamity Box all the way back in season 2. And she had gained her powers all the way from season 2 to season 3, while here in the Owl House, Luz had just gotten her Titan powers, but she was starting to learn about the glyphs from the very beginning. So its story progression is a little bit different, but I can see where you're saying about, like, yes, Amphibia kind of already did this, where we have the main protagonist dying and then coming back and then having the full force of the power that they got their stuff from, so that they can be able to defeat the final baddie at the end with all of their might. And I can see where that is coming from, but I think that it's just different enough that I can be able to separate the two.
Yeah. So, anyway, we come to the conversation that, by the way, this is a really key conversation that Luz and the Titan really have. And, by the way, just a shout out to Rebecca Rose as well, because I think she actually predicted that one day Luz actually would talk with the Titan.
There was an entire video that she did, I think like a few months before she was even brought in to being a production assistant on the Owl House. It was saying, like, will be able to talk to the Titan? And it turned out, yes, she did. She did talk to the Titan. So yeah, she actually predicted that this was actually going to happen.
Yeah, well, I think she had more foresight than everybody else. I think, in regards to where she talked to the Titan. So, because she was actually brought into the show right after she did that video. So, anyway, so there's an important conversation that Luz and the Titan have, and that is this: is that Luz asked the question, is anything that I'm doing, that I was actually wishing that the Collector would, like, beat up Bellows, and obviously kill Bellows even. And, does that not make me any better than Bellows, because of that? And, Titan says, look, are you drinking Ida's apple blood or something? He basically says and says, look, we would do anything to defend our families, there's nothing with that. But where Bellows is coming from is from a delusion, not from any type of passion or any type of, sympathy for anything. He believes that, in his, he's a psychopath, effectively, and he believes in his own bullshit. So, that's where Bellows is coming from. But where Luz is coming from, she's coming from a place of, of genuine heart. Effectively, and that's the great thing that's the big, forget all the what we're going to talk about next, but I think that's the greatest gift that the Titan basically gave Luz. Her basically,
exactly. I think that the best gift that the Titan gave Luz was that last piece of information that finally broke Luz away from feeling doubtful and insecure and feeling that she is the bad guy of her own story, because we saw this from the end of season 2 throughout entire season 3, that she felt like she was the villain of everything. She felt like she was the one responsible for where the Boiling Isles is at. She feels that she's responsible for King being captured by the Collector, and especially she feels responsible for her friends being separated from their family, for Flapjack being killed, and essentially that the entire Boiling Isles at this point was destroyed. I mean, we saw this in season 2, where she felt that Ida and Lilith being stuck with the curse and with almost them being petrified, and the fact that Ida can no longer do her magic. We saw in the first episode of season 2, she had this guilt that if she didn't come over to the Boiling Isles, none of this would have happened. But here's the thing, her coming to the Boiling Isles for a lot of people was the best thing that could have happened. And finally, the Titan was able to say, your deeds to everybody and even to the Boiling Isles has been so good that you don't have to worry about yourself being the bad guy, because you are far from it. You are actually the light that was filling up the darkness of the Boiling Isles this entire time. You have to understand that for 50 years, people were living under what I mean. They
Well,
didn't
yeah.
know
I mean,
about
I
this,
think
but
we've gone through that already. But I mean,
yeah, I know we gone through that already. But I'm just saying the point is that the Titan was able to grant Luce that last piece of her being determined to finally defeat Bellows once and for all. And the last thing that I want to bring up, and this is really important too, because again, this is a great callback to episode 1. Choice. Do you want to choose to do anything that you want? I mean, this whole chosen one thing, which was plagued with a lot of superheroes or fantasy stuff over who knows how long they've been around. And this whole chosen one, you're destined to do this. But no, she chose to stay in the Boiling Isle. She chose to want to learn everything from Ida. She chose to get the powers from the Titan because she is determined to do this stuff for her friends and for her family. And so I think that that is a very important lesson that the Titan was able to show for Luce. She has the choice to do what she wants, and she's not the bad guy in her story.
Yeah. So we get to a really great part, which is that the Titan offers to give Luz his power, his last bit of power, to bring her back to life and effectively turn her into basically Super Saiyan Luz, effectively, or Luz, the Titan Luz, whatever you want to call it. But she says, "Well, hang on a second, you think I'm really worthy of this?" And the Titan says, "Yeah, you really are." So, she shakes the hand of the Titan, and then she eventually, comes back to life. Well, not before, the Titan turns into, like, a really cool metal album, effectively. Like, he turns into, like, this whole, skeletal dinosaur, and then, effectively, he sinks under the water and effectively dies, giving Luz that last bit of, of energy to her. So, then we go back to the Collector, Ida, and King fighting the Bellows again, and he turns like this huge dragon form. And just about before Bellows tries to swipe, a la like the end of season 2, we then basically you basically see his hands just basically get splattered by this purple aura effectively, and then we see this massive transformation go on, and then we see the whole black dress, we see like the Titan skeleton boots, we see her hat basically start to glow, and String Bean go flying back into her hand, and she says, "I'm back," and she looks phenomenal.
Oh man, it is so fantastic. I mean, her and Anne's final form with the Calamity, powers. I mean, it's a tie in terms of like their final forms being this powerful and this awesome looking. I mean, if you compare like Super Saiyan, I would say that for Anne, but this is more like if the nine-tailed fox from Naruto was able to give full form of transformation. I would just kind of like compare it to that because it's like a beast form as opposed to like a whole bunch of energy coming out.
I was saying it's more as a metaphor, really, rather than like an actual thing. But I mean, if she goes supersonic, effectively, she.
Okay, we'll go there.
Okay, well, so anyway, so she turns into Titan Luz effectively, and she is oh so powerful. Effectively.
Oh, it is so great. I mean, she is able to do the Titan roar. She's able to create glyphs that are huge and able to destroy parts of Bellows. And she was able to concentrate her magic and being able to just rip him up into shreds. It is awesome.
Yeah. And so then they go into the heart of the Titan, and then Luz has basically her big moments where she says now eat this sucker, basically tears out tears out Bellows off the Titan heart, and effectively stops Bellows from taking over the whole island. There's funny enough, like you and I were when we saw that that image, those images we weren't supposed to see that were leaked, and we thought, oh hey, this is like that we're gonna probably see this big boss battle where the Titan rises up from the Boiling Isles, which is looking like it's gonna happen, but it doesn't actually happen. It like stops halfway through.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that was like concept art that they wanted to do originally, but then they decided to go for like the final piece where Bellows got control of the Titan's heart and then turns into the beast that he turned out to be later on. I wouldn't be surprised if that thing that was leaked was maybe like concept art or something.
Yeah, well, maybe if the Owl House had like a $300 million budget, maybe they probably would have done something like that. Maybe where like
yes, we would go all Attack on Titan or Pacific Rim on this mess.
Yeah. where like the whole island basically just rise up, and then you have to like design it like so like really really into detail. But we didn't get
Yeah.
that. We just got like we got Luce proclaiming that she is the warrior of peace, and now eat this sucker, and basically pulls Bellows out of the heart.
I
Oh,
love
it
this
looks
callback, by the
so
way.
good.
It does
Oh.
look amazing, by the way. I love the callback from episode 1, in which we get to see the Good Witch Azora basically just yelling out, "Eat this, sucker!" And then she launches like her wand as a missile. And then the monster says, "Oh no, my only weakness, dying!" So, yeah, I
mean,
love
it wasn't
the full circle
exactly that,
moment.
but she pulls it out. But it's just like the moment that they actually freeze frame at that moment, and it's like that's a really great thing to do because remember in Ocarina of Time when Link stabs the sword into Ganon, and they just freeze at that point because like it's such a big moment in the game, and then the whole thing just plays out after that. I think that's so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, the whole island then returns to normal, and Bellos, well, it doesn't return to normal, like, his hands, the Boiling Owls now has his arms stuck in the air, and some bits are sideways now, and so, let's just say, they somewhat saved whatever they could of the Boiling Isles, I guess, I guess they saved whatever they could from it, and so
Yeah. I mean, it's just a flesh wound.
just a flesh room. God. So
Yeah, but I think that even though that they were able to save the Boiling Isles and were able to remove Bellos from the Titan's heart, it's not over yet, because Bellos comes back as Philip Wittebane and tries to convince Luce that what he was going through was a curse, very similar to when Ida was cursed with the Owl Beast, and that he's back to normal and he's free. And Luce says nothing.
yeah, and she just glares at Bellows, and I don't know, like it's interesting, like she wasn't going to say anything, but at the same time she wasn't going to do anything either. I mean, maybe she also was kind of like wondering what she would do at this point, like because if she did the final blow herself, she'd be probably no better than Bellows. Maybe,
Exactly.
and
And here's the thing, like, she was already fooled by Bellows multiple times. She was fooled when he was Philip Wittebane. She was fooled when he was, Bellows trying to rescue Ida from the palace and from being petrified. So she has already been manipulated by Bellows at this point. And so, seeing Bellows being so desperate to rescue himself, saying, you're just as manipulative, just as evil as those witches. We're human. We're better than this. So even almost at the point of his death, he is still the same conniving, evil, fascist person he has always been, and he is never going to change otherwise. And the fact that Luce says nothing about this is actually pretty powerful, because she could have gone on this whole spiel about like, no, I've already fell for your tricks before, Bellows. I'm not going to fall for it
another
again.
thing about it, because just coincidentally, it starts raining. So the boiling rain starts to come in. And keep in mind,
Yes.
like, Luz has got the powers of the Titan. So, I mean, did she summon the rain clouds? Maybe? Or, like...
Possibly.
and also
Maybe she did some of the rain clouds. Maybe she did some of the rain clouds. Maybe like as a test to see if maybe Philip was going to be affected by it, because I don't think that like we saw that like Philip was like twitching and sweating trying to come up with a lie. So I take it that Luce was definitely not going to fall for it.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but I'm just going to go with it. I think maybe Luz summoned the rain. So, yeah, so as you said, to, call out Bellows on what he said and realize that it was a lie. And she, didn't really need to do anything at that point. So she just stepped away, and then, Ida, Rain, and King, like all the three characters that Bellows has seriously screwed over, and they just basically lift up their feet and curb stomp Bellows. And I just thought, and also, here's the thing, Rain then gives the line that was extremely satisfying. Now, let me give you two references. Gears of War for the curb stomp, and Halo 2 for that line. Because those are because that's what one of the elites say when they after killing an enemy, like they say that was extremely satisfying, and I believe the curb stomp is from Gears of War. We've had so many video game references in this. That's all I can think of now. effectively.
I mean, we did see the Pac-Man reference not too long
Oh, yeah,
ago,
exactly,
so
yeah, we did the Pac-Man reference as well. So.
I mean, yeah, so we already know that the people who work on the Owl House are just as big anime video game geeks as we are watching it.
And that's a good thing, by the way. Like,
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, also loses the Titan powers, effectively, and then she falls out of the air, and then realizes she can't fly anymore, and then Leader and King have to grab herself to save her, and they get that moment to Lion, finally gets a rest, and to figure out that finally they all did it together. And
yeah, and I really like the fact that Luz was able to tell King, "Oh, this is what your dad told me," and it's a bread pun.
Yeah, and if you're hilarious, oh yeah, your dad told me to tell you this. Hey, I'm Grump. I'm not so Grump. All right, I'll stop making that joke. But
Okay.
it was a bread pun. Oh, the bread pun was also full circle as well. There's a lot,
Yes,
again,
it was full circle.
yeah.
It was something that happened in season 1.
Exactly. So, and also, the Titan also, actually, this is one thing we forgot about to mention about the Titan. He's actually been watching everything that's been going on this entire time. Effectively,
Yeah.
He's had CCTV pretty much all over the aisles.
Pretty much. So yeah, he was actually keeping an eye on his child the entire time. So no, King was never abandoned. He was always watched over by his dad, and that is so sweet.
Yeah. So,
so he probably saw everything from when he was born, from when Ida finally got him, to when he was sending over that video message saying, "Hey dad, it's me. Can you please find me at the Owl House?" I mean, he saw everything.
Yeah,
and I'm sure he
did.
wanted to go over there and be with him so badly, but he was stuck in the in-between.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, now, not everything's back to normal, but obviously, the day is saved, and so,
Thanks to Luz Nocera.
So, the Collector lets everybody go out of the archive house, and also, actually, one good thing actually they did leave it on is that, it's, you said that, Dana doesn't like the term, happily ever after, and stuff like
That's
that,
correct.
which they left some bits open, effectively, there are still some witches out there who, still want things to still be run by the bad old ways, there's this, dictator that kind of runs everything, so there's, some of the, former heads of the Coven are still running things like that, and then there's other ones who are basically saying, no, we're not going back there again. You can see that Darius was saying, no, leave the throne alone.
I love the fact that Darius and Eberwolf were able to stop Terra and the other Coven heads from saying, no, we're not going back to the way things were. We're going to essentially get rid of all of the stuff that Bellows had done and start over from scratch.
Well, interestingly enough, that leaves a little bit open because, now the Coven heads, or the former Coven heads, I guess you could say, are divided, because so there's going to be those who don't accept change and who might actually fight and rebel against it, and then there might be other ones who, will, embrace change and, want to have a better way of life. So,
that's actually really good because that's something very similar to Legend of Korra, in which do you follow in the old traditional ways of bending, or do you go into the more modern ways of non-bending where you don't need the avatar anymore because you already have the technology where you can be able to create the elements and you can be able to try to save the world and try to bring in resources to, various places that need it. So this is actually would be great commentary if they continued on. Maybe we get somebody else who is a follower of Bellos's ways and tries to bring things back to the way they were.
Yeah, again, it's very, very unlikely, but if they do, I think they have left the door open to say, okay, well, if we do bring the Owl House back, at least we've got something to go on, effectively, when we go into the future.
I think that's fantastic, considering that, it is very parallel to our world, in which, there are some ideologies and there's some ways of different political stuff or religious stuff or any kind of, ways of thinking that people have said, oh, this is the way that things should be, even though that they haven't been practiced for hundreds of years and for good reason.
Anyway, we're going to have a big show coming up later on about talking about season 3 of the Owl House, so maybe we'll go into all theories then.
Yeah,
so.
we'll go to all of that stuff, so stay tuned.
To that. So anyway, going back to the episode, so wrapping up, effectively they all have get together in the Owl House again, and you see Ida and Rain cuddling one another in the nest, which I think was very cute, and then you get Luz and Amity coming back together, and also you finally get the final kiss at the end as well, which I think is I think all the Lumity fans no doubt will all be very happy about. in that.
Yeah.
And then obviously, Lilith gets reunited with Hootie, and then King, funnily, we were thinking, put the thing unthinkable, during the show. He gives Francois to this to the Collector, before he leaves, and
That's really sweet. And he even whispered to him, "I hope that you'll come back, one day." And you see the Collector just having like this big beady eyes, and just really happy to hear that the fact that King will still be his friend even after he leaves back to the stars, so that he can be able to get some growing up to do.
yeah, and. There's that, but then Luz realizes that the glyphs now don't work anymore because the Titan is dead. So the language of the Titan no longer, is relevant to where they are now. So what they are sitting on now is no longer a living, breathing Titan. It's a dead Titan, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a carcass. So
I mean, technically, they always thought it was a carcass, but now officially
it's a carcass. Yeah, effectively. So then, but then even though Luz realizes that she can't do magic anymore, she then realizes that she's only found a path to go down, and she happily returns back to the human realm, and completes her studies, and then we get a time skip, effectively. But then, funny enough, she decides that she's going to go back to the Boiling Isles and go to the University of Wild Witches. And as we know from Luz, she's going to study everything.
Of course she is.
Yeah. So
I mean, yeah, she was able to break new ground by pretty much studying everything in Hexside, because usually in Hexside you have to study one thing, but she decided to study all of it, and she's going to do the exact same thing when she reaches over to the University of Wild Magic. She said, "Okay, I'm going to study everything. I'm going to study Curses 101. I'm going to study Boiling Isles history. I'm going to study, glyph magic. I'm going to study everything." So, you know what? That is so loose. And I'm really happy to see that. And here's the thing. I mean, she might even be going to 2 universities, because if you see in the background, she has a dorm key. She was given a scholarship for her writing at Gravesfield. She recently graduated from high school with V. So, she has done so much. I mean, she even went to a convention where she did an artist alley, and she still has been able to keep her balance between going over to the human world and going over to the Boiling Isles, which I think is great, because I'm sure that this is one of the biggest things that a lot of people were really scared of. They were scared that this was going to go into the amphibia direction, that as soon as the adventure was over, the portal door was no longer going to be available because they've been destroyed, and the last remnants of the Titan blood was going to be gone forever, and then Luce and Camila would have had to say goodbye to her friends, and goodbye to Amity, and goodbye to Ida and King, and they were never going to see each other again. Nope. That didn't happen, and I'm sure people were really happy to learn about that. And
they basically looked at Star versus the Force of Evil and said, "Nah, we ain't doing that shit." No, what do you think? No, we ain't doing that. We are going to be doing proper, Luz will be able to travel between both the Boiling Isles and to the human realm, and have no issue doing it. And funny enough, it looks like it seems to that portal door looks like it's being powered by Collector magic rather than Titan magic.
It was done by the Collector, yes. So the Collector was able to be the one to help make the door to travel in between the Owl House and over to the house, which, by the way, they bought. So now they can be able to travel back and forth whenever they want to.
Oh, I gotta say, so I'm glad the Collector isn't afraid of needles.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Jeez. But no, I'm really glad to see that, Luce was able to, go back into the Boiling Isles and see her friends whenever that she needs to. But at the same time, keep to her responsibilities of finishing through high school and thriving with passing up her grades, and, becoming a writer and becoming an artist, and learning how to do magic in her own unique way, even though she had lost the glyphs for years. So I'm glad that she was able to grow and thrive, despite the limitations that she had.
Mm-hmm. So, then we effectively get like the credits, but actually they're not really like, they're more like movie credits if anything, because, during all of it you get to see like more scenes. So like, you get to see like, Hunter and Willow, like, growing up, like, Willow's now like this all-star, flyer derby player, and we're now...
Yeah, she plays, which is great, which is a great callback, because, the team that she's in is the Emerald Embles, which is the same team that they were trying to come up with. If you remember from the episode that we talked about in season 2, which is a great callback. And another great callback was all the way back in season 3 when Hunter wanted to learn about Palisman. And, thanks to Flapjack, he was able to create kind of like another Blue Jay Palisman companion named Waffles, which, by the way, we got the confirmation from Dana Terrace that the Palisman is Waffles.
Yeah.
Yes, and also it is Flapjack's little sister, which is so adorable.
Yeah, and also he's the apprentice, Palisman carver for Adele, and also,
Gwendolyn.
Gwendolyn as well. Yeah, I keep missing on the name. I do apologize. Then we get everybody else, and so Lilith is still doing the stuff for the museum. She's actually building it even bigger than it was before, and
she's making a library for Hexside.
Yeah, exactly, and she's doing a lot more, and Kiki's now doing hard labor, which I think she's just got it.
Deserves.
She deserves. Yeah, I guess we could say that, and and now I think Amity now is like she's a navigator. I think she's like
I guess she's a navigator collecting books. That is going to be built up for the library, because if they're expanding the library so that they can be able to learn things like the ways of the Titan and all of the history of the Boiling Isles that was never discovered before, then Amity is like traveling around and collecting all of these things, which it looks awesome, by the way. She looks like a sky pirate.
Yeah, and I think also, like, if you're in, there's also a callback on her airship as well. If you notice that the front of it's shaped like a cat.
That's actually a really great callback to Ghost.
Yeah, exactly. And if you remember, Luz went into the house, at Blight Manor, and she changed the butler to a cat. Do you remember that? Where she changed it? Yeah,
that's right.
That's where it's from. Yeah,
I remember now. You're right. That is so great. Yeah. I love it.
There's loads of Easter eggs in this episode, which I think is really good. And also, actually, if you notice, Dana Terrace herself is actually going to Hexside.
No, that's actually pretty cool. And Dana Terrace's signature was on the scholarship for Luce's, writing program for Gravesfield, which is great.
Yeah, I saw that.
And also there's a poly pin right on top of her A+ paper that she wrote.
Mm-hmm. So then we get to see like where everybody is at effectively. So I'm guessing Rain now, I guess, is like she's like an elected official, I guess, with.
Well, I guess Rain is helping Alador and Darius and Eberwolf of removing all of the glyphs.
Yeah, but she's wearing like a rosette, like like a political kind of like thing that where we have them during elections, like when politicians wear them. I guess now she's also like she's a politician now. I'm guessing.
I guess maybe Rain is. I mean, at this point, here's the thing, because there's no talking in the credits at this point in time yet. But yeah, I guess Rain would possibly be the one to help be one of the politicians of the Boiling Isles. I mean, they look to be that way.
Because you remember if you're in the Mooring Marks comics, remember when Mooring Mark was making fun of Luz being in the being made emperor and everything like that by the Collector, and then like Luz just says like I'll just resign, start a parliament, and then confine myself to prison and knit jackets for orphans and things like if you remember that guy. I thought Mooring Mark actually got that right, where it's like because if you look Rain's Speaker of the House in the Parliament. So I thought maybe that's what Rain was in the end credits of that. So I thought Mooring Mark got that one right. So, but the most important thing is that Alador and Darius have found a way to get rid of the sigils of people's arms.
Yeah, which is fantastic, by the way. And it just so happened to have been, if you remember from the Convention episode, where they were putting sigils into people, and that person was the first one who got that sigil, and now is the person who was the first one to remove it. And you see Viney and you see Emra working together to remove it, which by the way is a great callback to they were really passionate about healing while Emra was an illusionist and Viney was in the Beast Coven. So yeah, I mean, fantastic callbacks, by the way. And of course, a lot of people are definitely shipping Darius and Alador.
Oh yeah, they definitely are. And they're like, it's I saw them more as buddies, really. Like because I remember when Mooring Mark again doing I know the comics aren't canon. Give me a break on that one, but they all more like drinking buddies, if anything. So like but if you want to ship them, then that's fine. But
yeah, I mean at this point in time, I mean, why not?
No, why not? I guess. So, we get all these callbacks, and also we get like a memorial to Flapjack as well, which I think
Yeah,
is
that is super.
By the
sweet,
way,
by the
like
way.
all the Hexites, all the people, all the Hexite squad, the Hex squad, they all have Flapjack tattoos. Have you noticed?
I love that, by the way.
Yeah. So like,
I love that everybody has a Flapjack tattoo. Everybody has it on their arm, with the exception of Gus, who has it on his left ankle.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, so we think that it's wrapped up at that point, but then we get like an extra little bit at the end where, Luz comes through the portal, and because apparently she never had a Quincera, is it Quinceanera? Is it
Quinceañera.
Quinceanera, okay then. So she never had one of them because apparently she was so busy, rebuilding the boiling house. You can probably imagine that would take years off your life. I probably would imagine doing that.
I mean, it took 4 years for them to finally get things back on track.
Yeah, so they decided to throw like a big party for Luz in her honor. And,
which, by the way, I called it. I knew this was going to happen. I knew there was going to be a quinceañera. I was hoping there was going to and I'm happy.
Technically, it isn't. I mean, like, it's a king's
Shut up, let me have this.
All right. So anyway.
Okay, I know it's not. I know that she's already 18, and your quinceañera is supposed to be when you turn 15. But you know what? Shut up, technicalities.
All right, technicality. There you go. So, by the way, like, I mean, here's the thing, like, Luz did, where's a statue, like, in this world? And Boonjoy gets a statue in Vega. Doesn't Luz, like, done enough to, like, earn a statue? Like,
I'm sure that would have been her next birthday present, but they didn't have the time for it.
I guess probably not. Yeah, I guess priorities, are in order then. So, the Collector comes by, does a fireworks display, and by the way, I think does, like, what I think is the cleverest way to end a show, and that is that, Lou says, 1, 2, 3, and she tells everyone to say bye to the Collector, but in actual fact, they're actually breaking the fourth wall and saying goodbye to all of us.
Yes.
If anything, which I think is a brilliant way to end it.
Yes, and I also love the fact that King was able to discover that he has his own glyphs that are different from his dad's, and the fact that everybody was able to gather together for Luz's birthday was actually really, really touching. But the Collector thing was definitely like, the cherry on top, just like the chef's kiss moment. I mean, just the fact that they were able to have this really satisfying way of saying goodbye to the audience who had been tuning into the past 3 years, and for them to being so dedicated to where everything went up into that point was just a brilliant way of ending it off.
Oh, I think it was fantastic. What a show.
It was great, by the way. Yeah. And for those who have been wanting us to check it out, thank you so much, because we wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise.
Yeah. And now everybody wants me to watch Molly McGee. So now I'm doing that.
Okay, and I've been watching Big City Greens, and the both of us have been watching Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. So we're tuning into newer stuff, guys.
Yeah, we definitely are. And by the way, everybody who wants us to check out new shows, like say, oh hey, you've got to check out this show, you've got to check out that show. I mean, keep this in mind. Like right now, I'm going through like all my older shows to kind of like kind of compare and contrast to like where we are now in regards to Disney animation. So I will be doing something like about that later on in the future. So bear with me on like if you do recommend me a show and I've not seen it yet, please bear with me. I'm currently going through this other project at the moment. So,
yeah, and I'm going through a lot of other stuff too. I'm trying to watch various shows to catch up with my videos that I'm just way behind on. So if you are going to recommend me something, I will get to it at some point. Yeah. So please be patient.
No problem. And by the way, I am aware that the second season of Molly McGee has begun, and there's quite a few episodes that are already out for right now. But right now, they're not out on Disney Plus here in the UK yet. So I'm still waiting for them to appear. So
yes,
yeah. All right, everybody. Well, that was us talking about the Owl House. Now, there will be a bigger show that we will talk about Season 3 as a whole with other guests that will be announced in later course. But until then, thanks, everybody, for listening to us talk about the Owl House. And, thank you once again for everyone who did recommend the show to us, because we really enjoyed it. And, by the way, we are going to miss it. And also, there's another thing actually to add to this as well, is that this now is an end of an era for Disney animation in effectively way. Because, we started off with Gravity Falls, we then fell into Amphibia, and now we have the Owl House, and now these kind of story-driven shows, unfortunately, now have come to an end, and now we are effectively left with... By the way, we'll have this discussion at another time, but, I do have concerns about where Disney animation is now. I mean, don't get me wrong, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Molly McGee, I mean... pretty happy with at the minute, but the other shows, I don't know. I mean, are they really as good as like what we've had before? Have we been kind of spoiled over the last 10 years, really? like with what we've had before, and is what's going to be coming up very soon going to be able to carry on that legacy in a way? I'm
Yeah,
not
and
sure.
we'll have a really deep discussion about this, maybe in another episode of Aaron and Patricia, and definitely in the season 3 discussion of the Owl House and Casual Chat. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. All right then. Well, if with that due, take care, have a good week, and we will see you next week for Aaron and Patricia. Take care, and bye bye for now.
Bye, everyone.